At their anniversary dinner, the billionaire showed up with his mistress, but her secret letter left him speechless. "Octavia, you're being dramatic. We can celebrate our anniversary this weekend." "No. We can't." The words hung in the air of the most expensive private dining room in Manhattan. Grayson Mercer, billionaire real estate mogul, stood frozen as his wife rose from the table with a grace that made his mistress shift uncomfortably. "What's that supposed to mean?" Grayson demanded, his voice tight. "It means I'm done." Octavia's smile was peaceful, almost serene. "I've known about Sienna for 6 months. About Madison before her. About all the others I probably don't even know about. I'm not angry anymore, Grayson. I'm just finished." The color drained from his face. "Octavia, let's discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss. My lawyers have already filed the papers. You'll be served Monday morning." She placed an envelope on the table beside his champagne glass. "But I wanted to give you this first. Call it my anniversary gift. You can't just walk out. Not like this. Not on our 15th anniversary." Octavia paused at the door, turned back one last time. Her eyes moved to the young woman standing beside her husband, the mistress he'd had the audacity to bring to their anniversary dinner. "Enjoy your dinner. And good luck, Sienna. You're going to need it." Then she was gone, leaving behind only the scent of her perfume and an envelope that would shatter everything Grayson Mercer believed about his billion-dollar empire. "Now let me ask you something. Have you ever sacrificed everything for someone who never noticed? Have you ever made yourself invisible hoping someone would finally see you? What would you do if the person you gave up your entire future for brought their mistress to your anniversary dinner?" This is the story of a woman who traded $20 million for love and got betrayal in return. A billionaire who built his empire on a sacrifice he never knew about. And a letter that revealed the one truth that would destroy him. If you've ever felt invisible in a relationship, if you've ever given everything to someone who took it for granted, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Mr. Steven's Stories. Because what you're about to hear will change how you see sacrifice, love, and the courage it takes to finally choose yourself. Now let's go back to where it all started. To the moment Octavia Mercer made an impossible choice. 15 years earlier, Grayson Mercer sat on the floor of a tiny apartment in Queens, drunk on cheap wine and drowning in despair. "It's over." His voice was thick with tears. "The investors pulled out. All of them. I'm going to have to declare bankruptcy, Octavia. My company, everything I've built for the past 3 years, it's done." Octavia sat beside him on the worn carpet, their takeout Chinese food growing cold in its containers. At 25 years old, she was 3 months into a marriage her father had opposed so violently he'd cut her off completely. They had nothing. A one-bedroom apartment they could barely afford. Student loans. Dreams that seemed to be crumbling by the second. But she had something else. She had belief. "We'll find a way." She held him while he cried, this man she loved more than anything, watching his dream die in real time. "There is no way. I'm drowning in debt, Vi. 200,000 in business loans. Another 100 in personal guarantees I signed like an idiot." His laugh was bitter. "Your father was right about me. I'm not good enough for you. I never was." "Don't say that." Octavia's voice was fierce. "You're brilliant, Grayson. Your vision for sustainable urban development is revolutionary. Those investors were too short-sighted to see it. Vision doesn't pay bills." He drained his wine glass. "I should have stayed at my father's construction company. At least that was stable. You would have been miserable. At least I wouldn't have dragged you down with me." They sat in silence as the city lights flickered through their window. Somewhere below, car horns blared. Life continued, indifferent to their crisis. The next morning, while Grayson was in the shower, Octavia made a phone call she'd sworn she'd never make. "I need to see him. Her voice was steady despite her shaking hands. Today. Tell him it's urgent. 3 hours later, she sat across from her father in his corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. Harrison Hartley was 62 years old, a self-made real estate mogul who'd built his empire from nothing and had very strong opinions about who deserved his daughter and who didn't. So. You've finally come to your senses. Harrison didn't look up from the contract he was reviewing. I assume you're here to tell me the marriage is over. No. Octavia's back was straight, her voice clear. I'm here to make a deal. That got his attention. He set down his pen and looked at her properly for the first time since she'd married Grayson 2 years ago. What kind of deal? You're a businessman, Dad. So let's do business. Octavia pulled out a folder containing Grayson's business plan, the one the investors had rejected. His company failed because his investors lost their nerve. But the concept is sound. You know it is. You've been in urban development for 40 years. You know good ideas when you see them. Harrison took the folder, began leafing through it. His expression remained neutral, but Octavia saw the flicker of interest in his eyes. She'd inherited his instinct for recognizing potential. It's interesting. Harrison admitted after several minutes of silence. But your husband has no track record of success. He's a risk I wouldn't normally take. Then take a risk on me. What are you proposing? Octavia took a breath. This was it. The moment that would change everything. My inheritance. $20 million. I give up any claim to it, permanently and irrevocably, and you invest $5 million in Grayson's company. Harrison's eyes narrowed. You'd give up $20 million for 5. I'd give up $20 million for him. Octavia's voice didn't waver. You know his business model is solid. You know $5 million would be enough to get him to market. And you'd be making money on the investment. This isn't charity, Dad. It's business. And if his company fails anyway, then I'll have made my choice and I'll live with it. But at least I'll have tried. Harrison studied his daughter for a long moment. She'd always been the stubborn one, the one who'd chosen to marry for love instead of advantage, who'd walked away from everything he'd built because Grayson Mercer wasn't from the right family. You'll sign papers giving up all claim to your inheritance. Not just now, but forever. When I die, you get nothing. I understand. You'll never be able to come back and contest it. My lawyers will make it ironclad. I said I understand. And if I do this, if I give your husband his $5 million, you never tell him the real reason. He'll think he earned it with his pitch. If you tell him the truth, the deal is void and I'll destroy his company myself. Octavia felt that condition like a physical blow. To never tell Grayson what she'd sacrificed. To let him believe he'd won her father over through his own merit. But she understood why. Harrison knew his son-in-law's pride. Knew that if Grayson discovered his success was built on his wife's sacrifice, it would destroy him. Agreed. Harrison pressed a button on his phone. Get Reynolds in here with the inheritance waiver documents. And schedule a meeting with Grayson Mercer for Thursday at 2. After his secretary left, Harrison looked at his daughter with something that might have been respect. You're a fool. You know that? Maybe. Octavia's smile was sad. But I'm a fool in love. Love. Harrison's voice was bitter. Let's see if your husband's love survives success. In my experience, money changes people. Then I guess we'll find out. 2 days later, Octavia sat in the outer office while Grayson pitched his business plan to her father. Through the glass wall, she could see Grayson's nervous energy, his passionate gestures as he explained his vision for eco-friendly urban housing developments. She'd signed the papers that morning. $20 million, gone. Her future security, vanished. All so Grayson could have his dream. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When Grayson emerged, his face was flushed with excitement. He's going to do it. Grayson grabbed Octavia's hands. He's investing $5 million. He said my pitch was the most compelling he'd seen in years. He actually apologized for underestimating me. That's wonderful, honey. Octavia hugged him, feeling the weight of her secret settle onto her shoulders. I knew you could do it. Your father and I talked about you too. About how you believed in me when no one else did. He said any man lucky enough to have you in his corner should never take that for granted. I won't. Grayson kissed her forehead. I promise, Vi. I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to build something amazing and you'll be right there with me, every step of the way. I know you will. What Octavia didn't know was that those would be the last truly intimate words they'd share for years. That Grayson's success would consume him so completely he'd forget the woman who made it possible. That she would spend the next 15 years disappearing piece by piece while he built an empire on the foundation of her sacrifice. 3 months after Harrison's investment, Grayson's company began to turn around. 6 months in, they landed their first major development project. Within 2 years, Mercer Development was being featured in industry magazines as the future of sustainable urban housing. And with each success, Grayson changed. The man who'd cried on their apartment floor became someone who rarely showed emotion. The dreamer who talked about changing the world became someone who talked about market share and profit margins. The husband who'd promised never to take her for granted became someone who barely saw her at all. Octavia, meanwhile, made her own sacrifices. When the New York City Ballet called offering her a position in their corps, she turned it down. Grayson's company needed him in Boston for a crucial deal, and she couldn't imagine living in different cities. She never told him about the offer. He was too busy to notice. When her mentor offered to help her open her own dance studio, she declined. Grayson needed her to attend networking events, to smile at potential investors, to be Mrs. Grayson Mercer at galas and fundraisers. She never told him about that dream either. He didn't ask. She kept dancing in secret, teaching classes at a community center in Brooklyn 3 times a week. It was her escape, the one place she was still Octavia Hartley instead of Mrs. Mercer. Grayson never asked how she spent her days. He assumed she lunched with other wealthy wives and shopped and did whatever it was women like her did. He never knew about the Brooklyn studio. About the kids she taught who couldn't afford real dance classes. About the small recitals she choreographed that made her remember who she used to be. 12 years into their marriage, Harrison Hartley died of a massive heart attack. At the funeral, Grayson held Octavia's hand and said all the right things. I know you and your father had a complicated relationship, but he gave me my start. I'll always be grateful to him for believing in me. Yes. Octavia's voice was hollow. He believed in you. The will reading came 3 days later. Octavia wasn't surprised when the lawyer announced that Harrison had left her nothing. She'd known this was coming for over a decade. What did surprise her was Grayson's reaction. How could he do that? Grayson was furious as they drove home. You're his only daughter. He left everything to charity and gave you nothing. It was his choice. It's disrespectful. After everything we've been through, everything I built, he still couldn't accept me as your husband. Octavia said nothing. Let him believe Harrison's final slight was about him. It was easier than explaining the truth. That she'd traded her inheritance for his dream 15 years ago and he'd never even noticed. The affairs started around year 13 of their marriage. Octavia couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe it was a gradual slide from late nights at the office to business trips with unexplained expenses to the smell of unfamiliar perfume on his collar. She told herself it was paranoia. That successful men worked long hours. That she was being insecure. Then she found the credit card statement. The Mandarin Oriental. A suite. On a night Grayson had told her he was in meetings until late. She sat with that statement for 3 days before confronting him. Who is she? Grayson barely looked up from his laptop. What? The hotel room at the Mandarin. Who were you with? That was a client meeting. In a hotel suite. It's complicated business, Octavia. You wouldn't understand. Try me. His sigh was irritated, like she was being deliberately obtuse. I'm trying to close a deal. Sometimes that requires entertaining clients in ways that aren't conventional. Is sleeping with them conventional? I didn't sleep with anyone. His voice was sharp. And I don't appreciate the accusation. I've been working 80-hour weeks to build this company, and instead of supporting me, you're inventing fantasies about affairs. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. So she did. For another year. Until she couldn't anymore. Madison Pierce was 29, blonde, worked in investor relations. Octavia found the texts on Grayson's phone when he left it on the counter while showering. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? She put the phone down like it had burned her. Sat at the kitchen table while her husband showered, humming, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. Except she didn't confront him. She didn't scream or cry or throw his belongings into the street. She simply filed the information away and waited. Because somewhere in the years of disappearing herself, of sacrificing her dreams, of being the perfect supportive wife, Octavia had lost the energy to fight for someone who didn't see her. Madison lasted 6 months. Octavia knew when it ended because Grayson was home more, almost attentive for a few weeks, probably feeling guilty. Then came Sienna Wolf. 28. Socialite. Philanthropist. From one of New York's old money families. Everything Grayson thought he wanted. Octavia saw them together at a charity gala. The way Grayson's hand lingered on Sienna's lower back. The way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. She went home that night and allowed herself exactly 3 days to fall apart. 3 days of crying in her Brooklyn dance studio. 3 days of mourning not just her marriage, but the 15 years she'd spent loving someone who'd stopped seeing her. On the 4th day, she called a lawyer. On the 5th day, she started planning her exit. And on the 100th day, she wrote the letter that would destroy Grayson Mercer's carefully constructed world. Now before I continue, let me ask you something. If you discovered your partner's entire success was built on your silent sacrifice, would you tell them or would you leave and let them figure it out on their own? Drop a comment with your answer. And if you're feeling this story, hit that subscribe button because what happens next at that anniversary dinner is about to get intense. Let's get back to it. The afternoon of their 15th anniversary, Octavia stood in front of her mirror in the penthouse she was about to leave forever. The emerald silk dress hugged her figure perfectly. The diamond earrings Grayson had given her on their first anniversary, when they had nothing but love and dreams, caught the light. She looked every inch the successful billionaire's wife. She felt like a ghost. In her Hermes clutch, folded into precise thirds, was the letter. 3 pages. 17 drafts. Every word carved from her heart. This was it. The final performance. Her phone buzzed. Her college roommate, Lauren. You sure about this? Octavia typed back. More sure than I've been about anything in 15 years. You know he'll bring her. I'm counting on it. Because Octavia needed this. Needed to see him make that final, unforgivable choice. Needed the reminder of why she was leaving so she wouldn't lose her nerve at the last moment. She arrived at Lumiere at 7. The private dining room she'd reserved was perfect. Intimate. Expensive. The kind of place where billionaires celebrated milestones. The maitre d' showed her in with the deference money commanded. Will Mr. Mercer be joining you shortly, madam? Eventually. Octavia's smile was serene. Please bring the crystal and leave us undisturbed once he arrives. Of course. Alone in the dining room, Octavia placed the wrapped gift at Grayson's setting. The Great Gatsby, first edition, probably worth $8,000. He told her once it was his favorite book because Gatsby built an empire for love. The irony was almost too perfect. Her phone buzzed again. Her lawyer. Everything's ready. Papers will be served to his office Monday morning at 9. Thank you, Richard. Are you okay? Octavia looked around the beautiful room, at the champagne chilling, at the flowers she'd ordered, at the careful staging of this final goodbye. I will be. 7:30 came and went. Grayson was late. Of course he was. Octavia didn't mind. She sat in the elegant chair and remembered. Their first anniversary in that tiny Queen's apartment. Take out Chinese food because they couldn't afford anything else. Grayson had given her the diamond earrings she was wearing now, bought on a payment plan he'd hidden from her. I'm going to give you the world someday, Vi. Just wait. We'll have everything. I already have everything. I have you. How young they'd been. How naive. At 7:45, the door opened. Grayson walked in, devastatingly handsome in his Tom Ford suit, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. Success looked good on him. 42 years old and in the prime of his power. And on his arm, draped like an accessory, was Sienna Wolf. Octavia felt something settle in her chest. Calm. Clarity. The final confirmation that she was doing the right thing. Octavia. Grayson's voice carried that note of strained patience, the one he used when she was being inconvenient. I told you I had a business dinner tonight. And I told you 3 months ago that tonight was our anniversary. Octavia's voice was pleasant, almost conversational. But please, don't let me interrupt your business. Sienna shifted uncomfortably. Up close, she was even younger than her 28 years, beautiful in the way of women who'd never struggled, who'd never sacrificed, who expected life to arrange itself around their convenience. Gray, maybe we should. Sienna began. It's fine. Grayson cut her off, jaw tight. Octavia, you're being dramatic. We can celebrate our anniversary this weekend. No. The word was soft but absolute. We can't. Something in Octavia's tone made Grayson pause. In 15 years of marriage, she'd never said no to him. Not once. She'd been endlessly accommodating, infinitely understanding, perfectly supportive. What's that supposed to mean? Octavia stood, gathering her clutch. She moved with the grace that came from years of ballet training, before she'd given that up too. It means I'm done, Grayson. I've known about Sienna for 6 months. About Madison before her. About the others I probably don't even know about. She smiled, and it was genuine, almost peaceful. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just finished. The color drained from Grayson's face. Octavia, let's discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. My lawyers have already filed the papers. You'll be served Monday morning. She placed the envelope on the table beside his champagne glass, right next to the wrapped gift she'd chosen with such care. But I wanted to give you this first. Call it my anniversary gift. You can't just walk out, Grayson started, but Octavia was already moving past him. She paused at the door, turned back one last time. Her eyes moved to Sienna, taking in the young woman's confusion, her discomfort, her slowly dawning realization that she'd been part of something ugly. Enjoy your dinner. Octavia's voice was kind, almost sympathetic. And good luck, Sienna. You're going to need it. Then she walked out, leaving behind only the scent of Chanel No. 5 and the envelope that contained 15 years of truth. The door closed. Silence descended like a physical weight. Gray. Sienna's voice had gone shrill, her composure cracking. What was that? What's in the envelope? Shut up. Grayson snapped it without thinking, immediately regretting it when hurt flashed across Sienna's face. But he couldn't think about her feelings. Couldn't think about anything except the envelope on the table and the 3 words Octavia had said. I'm just finished. Not angry. Not hurt. Not betrayed. Finished. Like he was a project she'd completed. A phase she'd outgrown. Something to be closed out and moved past. His hands trembled as he reached for the envelope. Inside, 3 pages in Octavia's elegant handwriting. The same handwriting that used to leave him love notes in his briefcase back when they had nothing. Sienna was saying something, her voice getting louder, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. Grayson began to read. Dearest Grayson. If you're reading this, we've just had our final anniversary dinner. I say our loosely, since you brought your mistress to a celebration of our marriage. I'm not surprised. I've watched you become this person for years now, watched the man I love disappear into someone I barely recognize. But this letter isn't about your affair. Or affairs, plural, I should say. I've known about them for quite some time. Did you think I wouldn't notice? The late meetings that smelled like perfume. The unexplained charges to hotels I've never been to. The way you stopped really seeing me years ago. I stayed silent. I told myself you were under stress, that building an empire demanded sacrifices, that our love could weather this storm. I was a fool. But I wasn't writing to tell you about your betrayals. You already know them. I'm writing to tell you about mine. Grayson's eyes blurred. His heart hammered against his ribs. What betrayal could Octavia possibly confess? She'd been perfect. Supportive. Everything a wife should be. He kept reading. Do you remember 15 years ago? Our first anniversary. We were in that tiny apartment in Queens, eating takeout Chinese food because we couldn't afford anything else. Your company had just collapsed. The investors had pulled out. You were drowning in debt. You drank an entire bottle of cheap wine and told me you were going to have to declare bankruptcy, that your dream was over. I held you while you cried and told you it would be okay. Do you remember what I said? We'll find a way. The next morning, I went to see my father. Grayson's hands began to shake. Octavia's father. Harrison Hartley. The man who disowned his daughter for marrying beneath her station, who'd inexplicably agreed to meet with Grayson 3 days later, who'd handed over a check for $5 million. You never understood why my father suddenly agreed to meet with you 3 days later. Why he handed you a check for $5 million and told you it was an investment in your company. You thought you'd finally proven yourself to him. You thought your pitch had won him over. It wasn't your pitch, Grayson. It was my inheritance. The words blurred. Grayson had to read them 3 times before they made sense. It was my inheritance. My father called me into his office the day before your meeting. He told me he'd had his lawyers draw up papers. If I gave up any claim to my inheritance, $20 million, Grayson, my share of everything he'd built, he would invest $5 million in your company. But only if I walked away from everything I was owed. Forever. He made me choose between my future security and yours. I chose you. I didn't even hesitate. $20 million. She'd given up $20 million. For him. And he'd never known. Grayson's chest felt like it was caving in. His vision tunneled. Somewhere very far away, Sienna was asking him something, but he couldn't hear her over the roaring in his ears. I signed those papers while you were preparing your pitch, thinking you were about to save yourself. I gave up $20 million, and I never told you. Not because I wanted gratitude, but because I knew you. I knew if you discovered my father only invested because of what I'd surrendered, it would destroy you. Your pride couldn't have handled it. So I let you believe you'd earned it. I let you build your empire on my sacrifice and never said a word. Do you know what's funny? You've made speeches about your self-made success. You've been featured in magazines as the man who pulled himself up by his bootstraps. You've given interviews about never taking handouts, about earning every dollar. You built a $3 billion empire on my $20 million, Grayson. On my inheritance. On the future I gave up for you. And you never once asked what it cost me. The letter fell from Grayson's hands. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. $3 billion. Built on $20 million she'd sacrificed. Every speech he'd given about being self-made. Every interview where he'd talked about earning everything himself. Every moment of pride in what he'd built. All of it based on a lie. No. Not a lie. A sacrifice he'd never bothered to notice. Gray. Sienna's hand was on his arm. What does it say? Is she just being dramatic? He looked at this woman. This beautiful, young, shallow woman who loved his money and his power and his access. Who didn't know him at all. Just like he'd never known Octavia. Get out. What? Get out. His voice was dead, hollow. Call a car. Send me the bill. Just leave. Sienna's face flushed with humiliation and rage. You're going to regret this. Do you have any idea who my father is? I don't care. And he didn't. Couldn't care about anything except the pages on the table and the weight of 15 years of blindness crushing his chest. You're pathetic. Sienna grabbed her purse. Throwing away what we have for a wife who just walked out on you. She didn't walk out on me. Grayson's voice was barely above a whisper. I walked out on her 15 years ago. I just didn't know it yet. After Sienna left in a storm of expensive perfume and muttered curses, Grayson sat alone in the private dining room. The champagne was still cold. The table still set for two. The wrapped gift still waiting. He picked up the letter again. Forced himself to keep reading. You never asked why my father suddenly softened toward you. You never questioned why I stopped mentioning my inheritance, why I never seemed to care about what I was owed when he died. You never wondered why I gave up my ballet career just as I was being recruited by the New York City Ballet. You never asked why I was content to be Mrs. Grayson Mercer when I'd once had dreams of my own. New York City Ballet. She'd been recruited by the New York City Ballet and turned it down. When? Why had she never told him? Because he'd never asked. You never asked because you never really saw me. I was scenery in your story. The supportive wife. The beautiful accessory at your galas. The woman who ran your home so you could run your empire. I disappeared myself for you, and you never even noticed. Each word was a knife. 6 months ago, when I discovered your affair with Sienna, I was devastated. I cried for 3 days. I planned dramatic confrontations. I imagined destroying you the way you destroyed me. But then something shifted. I realized I wasn't crying for you anymore. I was crying for me. For the girl I'd been at 25 who traded her future for a man who couldn't see her. For the 15 years I'd spent making myself smaller so you could feel bigger. I stopped crying and started planning. Grayson read about her legal preparations. About her father's will containing a clause he'd never known about. About the $12 million that would revert to her in divorce. About the Boston Ballet position. About her moving out while he'd been too busy with work to notice. I've already moved out of the penthouse. I'm staying with my college roommate until I find a place in Boston. I've taken only what was mine. My clothes. My books. My mother's jewelry that you never liked me wearing because it wasn't expensive enough. I've left your life as quietly as I entered it. By the time you read this, I'll be unreachable. I've changed my number. My email. I've closed our shared accounts and opened my own. My lawyer will handle everything else. Grayson grabbed his phone with shaking hands. Called her number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Of course it was. He kept reading through tears he didn't know he was crying. I don't hate you, Grayson. I don't even blame you, not really. You are who you've always been. Ambitious. Driven. Self-absorbed. I'm the one who made myself invisible hoping you'd finally see me. I'm done hoping. I'm done sacrificing. I'm done being the woman behind the man. I'm choosing myself. Finally. 15 years too late, but still. The words blurred together. Grayson had to set the letter down, press his palms against his eyes, force himself to breathe. She'd given him everything. Her inheritance. Her dreams. Her identity. 15 years of her life. And he'd given her nothing but neglect and betrayal. You thought bringing your mistress to our anniversary dinner would devastate me. You probably imagined tears, scenes, desperate pleas for you to choose me. Instead, it freed me. It reminded me why I'm leaving. Why I should have left years ago. So thank you, Grayson. Thank you for being exactly who you are. For caring so little that you couldn't even pretend for one night. For making this final goodbye so much easier than I feared it would be. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because carrying anger would be just another way of letting you control my life. I'm letting go. Of you. Of us. Of the woman I became trying to love you. Don't look for me. Don't try to contact me. Don't send flowers or apologies or desperate declarations. I'm already gone. And for the first time in 15 years, I'm exactly where I want to be. Goodbye, Grayson. With finality. Octavia. P.S. The wrapped gift on the table. It's a first edition of The Great Gatsby. You once told me it was your favorite book because Gatsby built an empire for love. I thought about the irony tonight. Gatsby's love destroyed him. Mine set me free. Grayson set down the letter. Picked up the wrapped gift with trembling hands. Tore through the paper. The Great Gatsby. First edition. Probably worth thousands. He opened to the title page. Octavia had written something inside in her elegant script. To Grayson. May you find what you're looking for. It was never me. Love, Octavia. Love, Octavia. Not with love. Not forever yours. Just love, Octavia. A signature. A closing. An ending. Grayson read the letter 3 more times that night. Each reading drove the knife deeper into his chest. $20 million. She'd given up $20 million and let him believe he'd earned his success through his own merit. The foundation of everything he'd built, everything he was proud of, was her sacrifice. And he'd thanked her by disappearing into his work, by taking her for granted, by sleeping with women who meant nothing while the woman who'd given up everything waited at home, invisible. He tried calling her again. And again. And again. Every time, the number you have dialed is no longer in service. He drove to the penthouse at midnight. Let himself in with shaking hands. Her closet was empty. Not a single dress, not a single shoe. Like she'd never existed. Her side of the bathroom. Cleared out. No makeup, no perfume, no evidence she'd ever been there. On the dresser, one thing remained. Her wedding ring. The platinum band with the 3-carat diamond he'd bought her when his company finally turned profitable. She'd left it behind like she was leaving him behind. Clean. Final. Done. Grayson picked up the ring, closed his fist around it. Felt the edges cut into his palm. She was gone. Really, truly gone. The next 6 weeks were a blur of legal warfare. His lawyers tried to fight. Tried to contest the divorce, to challenge her claims, to protect his assets. Octavia's lawyers buried them. Every filing was airtight. Every claim documented. The clause in Harrison Hartley's will that protected Octavia if she ever divorced Grayson. The proof of the original deal, witnessed and notarized. The evidence of Grayson's affairs, meticulously gathered over 6 months. She'd planned this down to the smallest detail. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. Clean. Quick. Exactly as she'd promised. Grayson kept the empire. She took what was always hers. $12 million, adjusted for growth over 15 years. Closer to 18 million now. The press started asking questions. An enterprising journalist at Forbes uncovered the truth about Harrison Hartley's original investment. About the timing. About Octavia giving up her inheritance. The carefully constructed narrative of Grayson Mercer, self-made billionaire, began to unravel. Profiles were pulled. Cover stories delayed. Industry insiders whispered. He's not who we thought he was. Built on his wife's money. Self-made? More like wife-made. Grayson's business partners called emergency meetings. Is it true? Did you know about her inheritance? No. The admission tasted like ash. I never knew. How did you not know? Because I never asked. Because I never paid attention. Because I was too busy building an empire to notice the foundation it was built on. His mother called, her voice sharp with shock. Grayson, the things the papers are saying. Is it true? Did Octavia really give up $20 million for you? Yes. And you never knew? I never asked, Mom. In 15 years, I never once asked what she'd given up for me. The silence on the other end was damning. She gave up everything and you repaid her with affairs? His mother's voice broke. I raised you better than that. Apparently not. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Grayson sat in his penthouse surrounded by everything he'd built and nothing that mattered. Tonight he was supposed to attend a charity gala. The kind of event he'd once loved. Networking. Being admired. Feeling important. Now it all felt hollow. His publicist had advised him to bring a date. Show the world he was moving on. But the thought of pretending to care about someone, of making small talk and fake smiling, exhausted him. He went alone. The gala was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Hundreds of New York's elite milling around in designer gowns and tuxedos, sipping champagne and pretending to care about whatever cause was being celebrated tonight. Grayson stood at the bar, nursing a scotch he didn't want, and went through the motions. Grayson, good to see you. A business acquaintance whose name he couldn't remember clapped him on the shoulder. Tough few months, huh? But you're still standing. That's what matters. Sure. Grayson's smile didn't reach his eyes. Still standing. The woman beside him, someone's wife or girlfriend or mistress, touched his arm. You know what they say. Success is the best revenge. Revenge for what? Against your ex. She clearly thought she could take you down by airing your dirty laundry. But you're still here. Grayson looked at this woman, this stranger who thought she understood anything about his life. She didn't try to take me down. She simply told the truth. And I deserve every consequence of that truth. He walked away before she could respond. Found himself at the bar again, staring into his second scotch, wondering why he'd come, when he saw her. Octavia stood across the room. For a moment, Grayson thought he was hallucinating. That the scotch and the regret and the endless nights of reading her letter had finally broken something in his brain. But no. It was really her. She wore a midnight blue gown that seemed to float around her. Her hair was longer now, loose around her shoulders instead of in the perfect updo she'd always worn to these events. She was laughing at something an older gentleman was saying, her whole face lit with genuine joy. She looked 10 years younger. Radiant. Free. Alive. Everything she hadn't been with him. Grayson started walking toward her before his brain engaged. Some desperate, broken part of him needed to see her up close. To confirm she was real. To understand how she'd become this luminous while he'd become hollow. She saw him coming. Her smile didn't fade, but something shuddered in her eyes. A wall coming up. Protection. She met him halfway, gracious as always. Octavia. Her name cracked on his tongue. Grayson. She was polite. Distant. Like greeting a stranger she'd once known. You look beautiful. Happy. I am. Simple. True. No elaboration necessary. I read your letter. So many times. Octavia, He didn't know how to finish that sentence. What words could possibly convey the devastation of realizing what he'd lost? She held up one elegant hand, stopping him. Don't. Please. Whatever you're about to say, I don't need to hear it. But I need to say it. I was blind. Selfish. I took everything you gave and never valued it. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I already forgave you, Grayson. Her voice was gentle but firm. I told you that in the letter. I forgave you so I could move on. Not so you could feel better. The distinction was a knife between his ribs. I've changed. The words tumbled out desperately. I've been in therapy. I ended things with Sienna the night I read your letter. I haven't been with anyone since. I'm trying to be better. I'm glad. And she meant it. There was no sarcasm, no bitterness. I genuinely hope you become the person you should have been. But Grayson, it's not for me. That chapter is closed. We could start over. As different people. I see you now, Octavia. I finally see you. She smiled, sad and wise beyond her years. You see what you lost. That's not the same as seeing me. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. He didn't see Octavia Hartley, the woman who danced and taught children and had dreams of her own. He saw the wife he'd taken for granted. The sacrifice he'd never acknowledged. The love he'd destroyed. Please. His voice broke. Just coffee. Just a conversation. No. She said it kindly, but with absolute finality. I'm rebuilding my life. I'm dancing again. Did you know that? He didn't. Of course he didn't. I performed a solo last week. First time in 16 years. Octavia's eyes shone with a light he'd never seen before. I'd forgotten how it felt to be myself. I'm happy for you. And through his own grief, he was genuinely happy that she'd found herself again. I know you are. And maybe in another life, if you'd been different, if I'd been stronger sooner, we could have been what we needed. But in this life, I need to choose myself. Every day. And I can't do that if I'm looking backward. The older gentleman she'd been talking to earlier appeared at her elbow. Distinguished, kind-looking, with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He smiled at Octavia with obvious affection. Ready? He asked. Yes. She turned back to Grayson one last time. I wish you well, Grayson. I really do. I hope you find what you're looking for. I already found it. The words escaped before he could stop them. I just didn't know it until I lost it. Then I hope you find it again. With someone else. Someone you'll actually see. She squeezed his hand briefly, a ghost of old affection. Goodbye, Grayson. Goodbye, Octavia. He watched her walk away, her hand tucked into the arm of the older gentleman. Walter something. He'd heard someone mention he was the director of the Boston Ballet. At the door, Octavia turned back once. Met his eyes across the crowded room. Smiled, genuinely and freely. Then she was gone. Grayson Mercer stood alone in the middle of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, surrounded by hundreds of people and utterly, completely by himself. He'd built a $3 billion empire on his wife's sacrifice and never knew it until she was already gone. He'd thought he was the hero of his own story. The self-made billionaire. The man who pulled himself up from nothing. He'd been wrong. She was the hero. She always had been. The woman who'd given up $20 million for love. Who'd sacrificed her dreams so his could come true. Who'd spent 15 years disappearing herself hoping he'd finally see her. And when he finally did see her, when he finally understood what he'd lost, she was already free. Outside the museum, Octavia stepped into the cool autumn night and breathed deeply. The air tasted clean. Free. "Are you all right?" Walter asked kindly. "I am." And she was. "I really am." That must have been difficult. Seeing him? Octavia considered. No. It was necessary. Confirmation that I made the right choice. No regrets. Only that I didn't choose myself sooner. They walked toward Walter's car, their conversation turning to next week's rehearsal schedule, to the new choreography she was developing, to the life she was building that had nothing to do with Grayson Mercer. For the first time in 15 years, Octavia Hartley was exactly where she belonged. Not behind anyone. Not supporting someone else's dream. Just herself. Finally. Completely. Free. 6 months later, spring arrived in Boston with cherry blossoms and possibility. Octavia stood backstage at the Boston Ballet, her heart racing with an anticipation she hadn't felt in years. Tonight was her first solo performance since she was 24 years old. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. "Break a leg tonight. So proud of you." Octavia smiled. Typed back. "Thank you for everything. For believing I could do this. You always could. You just forgot for a while." The stage manager called 5 minutes. Octavia took a deep breath, closed her eyes, centered herself. When she opened them, she was ready. The performance was transcendent. 16 years of lost dreams poured into every movement. The audience felt it. She could hear their collective breath catching, could feel their energy feeding hers. When the final note faded and she stood in the spotlight, breathing hard, alive, the applause was thunderous. She'd done it. Proved to herself that Octavia Hartley still existed. That she was more than Mrs. Grayson Mercer. That her dreams had simply been sleeping, not dead. After the performance, Walter found her in her dressing room. That was extraordinary. His eyes were bright with pride. "I've directed a lot of dancers, Octavia. What you did tonight, that was art. Thank you." She was still in her costume, still glowing with the rush of performance. "For believing in me. I saw your talent the first day we met. I'm just glad you finally see it too." Later that night, Octavia walked along the Charles River, too energized to sleep. Her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. But something made her. "Hello. Octavia. It's Grayson." She should have hung up. Should have blocked the number. But curiosity held her. "How did you get this number?" "I have my ways." His voice sounded rough. "I saw the review in the Globe. About your performance tonight. It said it was transcendent." "It was. I'm happy for you." "Thank you." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Grayson spoke. "I'm selling the company." "What?" "Mercer Development. I'm selling it. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Building things, making money, it all feels empty." "Grayson. I know. I know I can't call you That I'm not supposed to contact you. But I needed you to know. Everything I built, it was worthless because I built it on your sacrifice and never saw you. I don't want that life anymore. What do you want? I don't know. To be someone who deserves the gift you gave me. To understand what really matters before it's too late. His voice broke. To be the man you believed in when we had nothing. Octavia felt something twist in her chest. Not love. That was dead and buried. But something like compassion. I hope you find that, Grayson. I really do. But you won't find it by calling me. You won't find it by selling your company or making grand gestures. Then how? By doing the work. By learning to see people. By valuing what matters instead of what impresses. By being honest about who you are instead of who you think you should be. Did you learn that from leaving me? I learned that from losing myself. Octavia's voice was gentle but firm. Grayson, I need you to stop calling. I've built a new life. I'm happy. I'm free. You're part of my past, not my future. I know. Then let me go. Really let me go. Another long silence. Goodbye, Octavia. Goodbye, Grayson. She ended the call. Blocked the number. Kept walking along the river as the city lights reflected on the water. She'd meant what she said. She was happy. Free. And Grayson was a chapter that was closed. Now here's what I need to know from you. Have you ever made yourself invisible for someone who never noticed? Have you ever given up something huge and stayed silent about it? Have you ever stayed too long in a relationship where you disappeared? If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own sacrifices, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Mr. Stephen's Stories for more tales about courage, sacrifice, and the power of choosing yourself. And drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Octavia's position. Would you have told him about the inheritance or kept it secret like she did? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose themselves. Because here's the truth this story teaches us. Love isn't about disappearing. It's about being seen. Sacrifice isn't noble if it's invisible. It's just loss. And walking away from someone who doesn't see you isn't giving up. It's waking up. Octavia Mercer spent 15 years being the woman behind the man. She gave up her inheritance, her dreams, her identity for a man who built an empire on her sacrifice and never once asked what it cost her. $20 million. A ballet career with the New York City Ballet. 15 years of her life. All given freely, all taken for granted. When she finally chose herself, she didn't do it with anger or revenge. She did it with grace and finality. She forgave him not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. And in the end, she didn't need him to see her. She didn't need his regret or his apologies or his desperate attempts to change. She just needed to remember who she was before she'd made herself invisible. That's the lesson. You don't need someone's regret to validate your worth. You don't need their apology to move forward. You don't need them to finally see you to know you matter. You just need the courage to choose yourself. To reclaim your dreams. To stop waiting for someone to appreciate your sacrifice and start appreciating yourself. Grayson Mercer built a $3 billion empire on his wife's $20 million sacrifice. He never knew it until she was already gone. He thought he was self-made. He thought he'd earned everything through his own merit. He was wrong. And by the time he realized the truth, by the time he finally saw what Octavia had given up for him, she'd already moved on. Some regrets are permanent. Some losses teach you who you should have been too late to become that person for the people who mattered. Don't be Grayson. Don't take love for granted. Don't assume the person giving everything will always stay. Don't wait until someone's gone to realize what they were worth. And if you're Octavia in someone's story, choose yourself. Before you've given away so much you've forgotten who you are. Before you've made yourself so invisible you can't find your way back. It's never too late to reclaim your life. Octavia did it at 40. She walked away from a billionaire and an empire and 15 years of investment. She reclaimed her name, her dreams, her identity. And she danced. Finally. Freely. That's what courage looks like. Not staying and fighting for someone who doesn't see you. But leaving and fighting for yourself. I'm Mr. Steven, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember this. The person who loves you should see you. All of you. Not just the parts that make their life easier. Not just when you're gone. Choose yourself. Always. And if someone can bring their mistress to your anniversary dinner and still expect you to stay, leave them with a letter that shatters their world and walk away with your head high. That's not revenge. That's justice. That's freedom. That's choosing yourself after years of choosing them. You deserve to be seen. To be valued. To be chosen every day, not just when it's convenient. And if someone can't do that, they don't deserve your sacrifice. Let them read about what they lost in a letter. By then, you'll already be gone. Already free. Already exactly where you belong.